Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's begin today's session of the comprehensive Hindu analysis with the first article that is written by the former Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh. In this article, he is trying to caution the government that in the ongoing crisis between Ukraine and Russia, while the Indian government is trying to take advantage by buying discounted oil from Russia and even trying to buy coal from Russia at a discounted price, Dr. Manmohan Singh is of the view that the government of India should be very careful because in the long run, these discounts will come back to haunt India. And rather than that, India should try to maintain cordial relationship between the two world groups right now. Also, he's saying that ditching the dollar and trying to pay Russia in rubles just to have a discounted trade with Russia also can be detrimental to India in the long run because once you mutually decide the value of currency of some country, it will be very difficult to change it in the future because now you are not calculating the value of ruble as compared to dollar or as compared to the free market of the world. Now let's look at some of the important points that he is raising in this particular write-up. Dr. Manmohan Singh is saying that ever since the Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall fell down in 1989, the entire world has been moving towards globalization and liberalization. Thus, in the past 3 decades or so, most of the developing countries in the world have seen a multifold rise in their income and in their trade, which includes India also. Throughout the world globally, the trade and per capita GDP has nearly doubled since 1989. We have also seen that with increasing globalization and liberalization, the number of wars and conflicts have reduced considerably. That is mainly because a lot of countries are now dependent on each other. Many countries have taken loans from each other. They consider the other country as a market for their products. That is why we see that in most cases, the countries don't want to go on an all out war which would harm their market and their economy in the long run. While we have to understand that the Russia Ukraine crisis is an exception in this case, but usually we have seen that all out wars have reduced considerably in the past 3 decades. He's also making a point here that the economic sanctions that have been imposed on Russia have not just impacted Russia. It has in fact impacted the entire world in some way or the other. He has given you some examples. For example, in Egypt, a country which used to import a lot of wheat from Russia and Ukraine, there is a food shortage right now. India, in fact, has been taking advantage of this opportunity and we are trying to export certain amount of wheat to Egypt now. In fact, there was a news just about a week back that Egypt has approved India as a wheat supplier and would import at least 1 million tons of wheat, which is a great news for India. Also, because the cost of wheat in the international market is on an increase. The other example that he has given is of Germany, which is highly dependent on the Russian gas because once the winters approach, the central heating mechanism of most of the German cities require a lot of natural gas, which is supplied to Germany by Russia. So their dependence on the Russian gas is now coming back to haunt them. Even America is not away from the impact of these sanctions. Americans are right now facing shortage of electric cars since the car batteries require a lot of nickel, which is majorly produced in Russia. And thus, there is a shortfall of nickel, and the electric car batteries are now running short in America as well. Thus, Dr. Manmohan Singh is making a point that we are living in a globalized, connected world where it is not possible to boycott one country entirely because the impact will be felt throughout the world. Ever since the Berlin Wall fell down and the Cold War ended, we are living in a concept of global village. Global village means the borders have now diluted. There can be trade between any two countries across the world right now. We have developed such systems because all the countries around the world have accepted that the US dollar should be used as a reserve currency throughout the world. And that has been successful for many decades now. India also is a part of that system where we accept US dollar payments and we pay our importers in US dollars only. However, now that India is trying to make a bilateral agreement with Russia for buying discounted oil and agreeing them to pay in ruble, Dr. Manmohan Singh is saying that this is a step back and India should not go into that direction. India, in fact, is one of those countries that have benefited greatly from globalization and liberalization. In fact, as far as India's numbers in trade are concerned, there has been a great impact that globalization has made on India. For instance, India's trade has tripled since our globalization reforms were introduced. Thus, we have seen the benefits of accepting and recognizing dollar as the reserve currency of the world, and now we should not take a step back just because we are being attracted by discounted oil from Russia. Dr. Singh is also making a point that gone are the days that India used to pursue the policy of non alignment. Now, the policy of non alignment all through the Cold War was possible because at that point of time, external trade was a very small part of our economy, which is not true today. Meaning that now we are much more dependent on other countries as compared to what we were earlier for our trading. Thus, in short, India should ensure that we have good relationship with both the blocs, the bloc that is led by Russia and the bloc that is led by the Western nation. Now, at least till now, America has been very considerate and accommodative of India's stand, along with other Western countries such as France, UK, and all of them have been very understanding of India's position. But as for Dr. Manmohan Singh, India should not stretch it too far. We should not take undue advantage of the confidence that the Western countries are putting in us, and we must accept that India must have good trading relations with both the sides in order for our continued development. Yes, it is very attractive to buy discounted oil at a time when our economy is going through high inflation and at a time that the global oil prices are continuously surging. But in the long run, it would not be for India's benefit. Thus, India should look towards a long run horizon and should ensure that we maintain good relationships. We ensure that the global uncertainty ends as soon as possible. We must ensure that the private investment in the country is boosted rather than looking for a short term solution to our economic problems by importing discounted crude oil. We must look at it as an opportunity to solve our long term problems. That includes giving more jobs to youth, giving more jobs to women, and ensuring that our fiscal situation becomes better. Now, while Dr. Manmohan Singh is on the side that India should not go into the trap of buying discounted oil from Russia, the fact is, on the ground, if you see, the situation is very different. And let me share with you some headlines of international media to make you understand of where the Indian government stands right now. The Indian government, as per this headline, is actually now aiming to buy coal also from Russia after buying increased amounts of Russian oil. Just like with crude oil, Russia is prepared to offer a good discount to India on coal as well. Now, if you have been following domestic news, you would see that India's power plants are running short of coal. And this is a problem that we have been facing since the beginning of the pandemic. Every few weeks, you have a headline in the newspaper that we only have 8 days or 10 days of fuel remaining in our power plants. So, in that situation, India's interest, as per the government, is in buying cheaper coal from Russia. So, this is something that Indian government is contemplating right now. Not just this, India has bought multiple varieties of Russian oil. Now, multiple varieties mean whenever you have crude oil coming from different sources, they are not the same. They are different varieties of crude oil. Some crude oil have some different types of impurities, some are heavy, some are lighter, and all of them have to be refined in a different manner altogether. But India right now has taken almost all the varieties of Russian oil that is being offered to us at a discounted price. Now, also, let me share with you certain numbers of how much oil do India usually import from Russia. As you can see, this is the data from April 2021 to Jan 2022. Look at how much oil we have taken from Russia. This is about $2.13 billion worth of oil as compared to countries such as Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, or even the US. The oil that we are taking from Russia is much lesser as compared to the other nations. However, the situation started to change very soon after Russia attacked Ukraine in Feb of 2022. Let me show you the present situation. If you see here, India's import of Russian crude oil in terms of the number of million barrels that we are importing reached a very high position in the month of March 2022. And then in April 2022, that is the ongoing month, again we have imported a lot of oil from Russia as compared to the previous 2 years. So yes, the discounted prices that have been offered to us by Russia are being taken advantage of by the Indian government, despite many experts, including Dr. Manmohan Singh, suggesting the Indian government to be very wary of those. Now, this was about the oil import from Russia. Let me also show you a graph of coal import to get you an idea of what Indian government is thinking right now. If you actually see, the coal import in just the last month and in the month of April, it has reached the highest point since the last couple of years. So India's coal imports from Russia in March is almost the highest in the past 2 years, again because of the discounts that they are offering and because of the fact that India is running short of coal to run our power supply for a longer period of time. So we can very clearly see what is the orientation of the Indian government in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The next article that we have here is focusing on China's recent pact with the Solomon Islands. As you would have read, Solomon Islands are a very small group of islands which are towards the north of Australia. China recently signed a landmark security pact with the Solomon Islands, according to which officially the two sides will cooperate on maintaining social order, on protecting the safety of people's lives and property in Solomon Islands, and for humanitarian assistance and natural disaster. Meaning that in all these three situations, Chinese government has agreed that we will send our security forces to the Solomon Island whenever there is a need in the island to protect the people against these problems. Now, on the outside, it might look like a good policy where a larger country is trying to help a smaller island nation, but there are a lot of layers under this. First, it gives a chance to China to again set up kind of a military base in a small nation, and the military base which is very close to Australia, too close to Australia for its comfort, and that is why Australia is one of those nations that have very sharply objected towards this. In fact, Australia and the US are two nations that have openly spoken about this particular deal between China and the Solomon Islands, because see, the reason why Australia was always a very secure country for itself, or the reason why the Australian government could criticize China openly, was because they knew that they had geography on their side. They knew that they are so far away from these countries such as China that it is not possible for them to directly engage in a conflict with Australia. But now with China having an open license to send their military to the Solomon Islands, Australia is obviously worried and they are not liking what is happening here. The Solomon Islands, on the other hand, are saying that this is just to maintain social order in our country. China will just help us by visiting continuously and seeing if there are any problems in sending their own military forces. But Australia and US obviously do not agree to this. US now in a response has announced that we will try to reopen our embassy in the Solomon Islands. An embassy which has been closed for over 2 decades. And US all of a sudden is saying, no, now we will open up our embassy. China obviously has responded that why did the US not open its embassy for more than 2 decades? All of a sudden what has happened to US? But we all know that this is a response towards what is China doing. Now, the interesting fact is that in the past 5 years or so, China has been extremely aggressive in looking forward to set up their foreign bases. In 2017, China established its first foreign base in Djibouti. The Solomon Islands government said that China will not build a base here, but no one right now is trusting the Solomon Islands, and everyone knows clearly what are the intentions of China, and it is being seen as another Chinese attempt to encroach on the sovereignty of a small nation. Now this, as you can see, is the location of the Solomon Islands. This is Australia, as we had discussed earlier. Their distance from China is pretty considerable, and that is why they were not really fearful of Chinese attack or Chinese confrontation. But now that China has this military pact with the Solomon Islands, the situation has changed considerably. Also, this is not the first time that China has had this kind of an agreement, or this is not the first attempt that China has made to set up their military base outside China. Let me show you certain examples specifically in Africa. As you would know, in the past decade or so, China, India, US, and some other Western nations such as France, etc., have been trying to improve and increase their influence in Africa. China specifically has been investing a lot of money in most of the African nations. As a graph would show you, most of the African nations are under the Chinese debt in some way or the other. Many of them, in fact, are being seen as possible sites for setting up new Chinese military base. The first one that opened up in Djibouti in 2017 is for everyone to see. There have been talks of such military bases being set up in Tanzania, Kenya, Angola, and Seychelles as well. Now, since Solomon Islands is one of those nations that usually don't come in the news, let's see a few details about the Solomon Islands. Now, Solomon Islands is actually a part of the Melanesian group of islands in the Pacific and lies between the islands of Papua New Guinea and Vanuatu. These islands mainly were controlled by the British, but they changed hands multiple times. So from the British, they went under the control of Germans, then Japanese during the Second World War, and then again they came back under the control of Britain. Although the islands became independent in 1978, they have been following the concept of constitutional monarchy, meaning that the official head of the country is still the British monarch only. So the Queen Elizabeth II of England is still the ruler of Solomon Islands, although she does not really have any powers to interfere in the ongoing proceedings in the Solomon Islands. So they have their own prime minister, but they also have their own governor general who keeps Elizabeth II, that is the Queen of England, apprised about what is happening in the island, and that is how they have a concept of constitutional monarchy. The next article that we have is about the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's visit to India that has just started from Gujarat. As you know, the British Prime Minister is here in India for a 2-day visit in the state of Gujarat. The UK Prime Minister, as you can see, is seen here not because he wants to ride it, but because JCB, where he visited, is actually a UK based company, and that is why he visited here in Gujarat. So, the British Prime Minister is here, which is a very significant visit in the sense that this is his first visit to India as the British Prime Minister. He has been very excited about it and he has been making multiple announcements. The British Prime Minister, in fact, is expected to announce major investments and trade in key industries in the country. As you would have seen in the news a few days back, Boris Johnson in fact visited Ukraine, met with the Ukrainian president. He was in fact walking on the streets of Kyiv and looking at all the destruction that the war has done in Ukraine. Now, his visit in India was long overdue. As you would know, he was supposed to visit as a chief guest on the Republic Day as well, but he could not follow up because of the pandemic. And now he is finally visiting India to improve the relationship between the two old partners. Now, one of the main highlights of the visit is that the two sides, that is India and UK, had started negotiations about a free trade agreement in the beginning of 2022. It is expected that this visit will further increase the speed of negotiations, and the two sides are hoping to complete these negotiations by the end of 2022. Now, the negotiations are aimed to achieve a fair and balanced free trade agreement to cover more than 90% of the tariffs between the two sides. The aim is that the bilateral trade should reach about $100 billion by the year 2030. Now, the economic ties between India and UK have been pretty decent if you look at the past few years. UK, in fact, for many years had been the center of India's attraction in EU because EU gave kind of a free pass to go and invest around EU. What Indian companies used to do was they used to set up their offices and headquarters in UK, and then after that they used to cover the entire European Union from there. But after Brexit, this situation has changed. And that is why UK now wants to have a separate agreement with India to make sure that their investment keeps on increasing, because India has always been one of the largest investors in UK over a long time. In fact, in 2020-21 also, India was UK's second largest source of investment. After Brexit especially, because the EU agreements now don't apply to UK, Britain has been in a hurry to sign free trade agreements with multiple nations. They are in talks with not just India but also with countries such as Canada, Mexico, and the Gulf nations to ensure that their trading relations and their economic progress does not get hurt because of Brexit. Now, although the free trade agreements are a good sign, and India, in fact, has been on a spree of signing free trade agreements. Just in 2022 itself, India has signed free trade agreements with the UAE and Australia as well. And this will be another big agreement once it finalizes before the end of 2022. However, there are still many challenges in between the first and the last step. As it is very famously said, there is many a slip between the cup and the lip. Meaning that from the beginning of the negotiations to the end of the negotiations, there can be a lot of hiccups in between. For example, there can be delays in signing of the free trade agreements. For example, in 2004, India signed an interim trade agreement with Thailand to reduce our tariffs on 84 goods, but the agreement never got converted into a full-fledged free trade agreement. Also, there may be certain objections from the WTO if they think that the agreement goes against some of their provisions. So the road ahead for the free trade agreement might not be as smooth as the two sides are assuming, but the good sign is that both the sides are very keen now to sign this agreement. UK has always been keen, and especially after Brexit, they are looking to forge new partnerships. India, on the other hand, was earlier regarded as a country that was very skeptical of signing free trade agreements. But our renewed interest in free trade agreements, with multiple agreements being signed in the past few months, augurs very good for these upcoming negotiations. Now, also, let's have a look at the present trade between India and UK and how exactly is it favorable to India. If you see in the past decade or so, almost every single year, India has been in trade surplus with respect to UK. So we export more stuff to UK as compared to what we import from UK. This graph is only showing you the merchandise trade, that is the trade in goods. We have a different graph for trade in services. As far as the services part is concerned, again India has a very healthy trade surplus as compared to UK. It is expected that once this trade agreement is signed, it will be further beneficial for India and UK as well. The next article that we have here is on a very interesting topic that was discussed a few days earlier as well, that is UK's Rwanda asylum plan. Now let me tell you in very simple terms what this plan is. The UK government, like many other developed nations, is not very happy with the fact that a lot of people come to UK to seek asylum. They think that they can have a better life in UK, so they leave their country and they want to come to UK. Now there are two ways in which you can come to a new country. One, you can come officially, get a visa, either a work visa, student visa, etc., and then you can migrate to the new country. But this kind of a process, especially in UK, is very difficult and very costly. If you don't have a lot of skills or if you don't have a lot of money, it is very difficult for people from outside UK to come and migrate to UK. Now, the second option is that you come illegally. How do you come illegally? There are a lot of agents, etc., that promise you that in exchange for money, we will send you to the other country. You would have seen Bajrangi Bhaijaan, how Salman Khan went to an agent and he said, okay, give me the money and I will take you to Pakistan. Similarly, there are these kind of agents in almost every country. Now, when the agents send you illegally to the other country, first they charge you a lot of money. And secondly, it is also very dangerous for you. These are unauthorized routes by which a lot of people enter UK. Now, the UK government is not happy with that. So they have decided now, as per the agreement with the country of Rwanda, that any person who has entered UK in an unauthorized manner after Jan 1 of 2022 will not be kept in UK. They will be sent to Rwanda. Why? The Rwanda government has been given the responsibility that you keep these people, you process their asylum applications legally one by one, and we will see if we have to accept them, great. If we deny them, then you can send them back to their country. Now the question is, why is Rwanda doing this? See, Rwanda, as many other developing and least developed nations, is short of money. So they are doing this because it will give them money from UK. As per the agreement, UK will pay Rwanda £120 million apart from a fixed amount per person that is being sent from UK to Rwanda. So this is kind of an outsourcing of the asylum system. Illegally, whoever enters Britain after Jan 1, 2022, they will be sent to Rwanda. They will be kept in Rwanda. The Rwanda government will then try to process the application, send it to UK one by one. If they are accepted, great. If not, then they will be sent back. Now, this seems like a very different kind of an idea, but this is not the first time that a developed nation has done this. In fact, nations such as Australia, nations such as Israel have done these kind of agreements. In fact, Israel did this agreement with Rwanda only. They asked the Rwanda government to take care of these people and said that we will pay you money. Now the problem is that Rwanda itself does not have a great human rights record. So it leads to a lot of questions about what will be the fate of these people who were running from their country. They came to UK hoping for a better life and now they are being forcefully sent to a country like Rwanda. Now let's look at the background of why has it happened in UK specifically. It was in 2012 that the UK government implemented the hostile environment policy, under which it became very hard for anyone to enter UK in an unauthorized manner. Now the problem was that this meant that even people who came to UK legally were seen in a very bad light by the local people. The local British citizens thought that anyone who is coming from outside is just coming to take advantage. The people are just coming to take advantage of our good healthcare. They will take our jobs and our environment will be very bad now. And thus it led to a lot of racism related problems. Even the people who came legally in UK had to see these problems, and that is why the policy was criticized by many people throughout the world. Now, in 2021, the government of UK introduced a nationality and borders bill. The objective was to deter illegal entry into the UK. Again, the British government, because they offer a lot of benefits to their citizens and people living there, anyone who illegally enters UK becomes a burden on the UK exchequer, and they don't want that to happen. They also say that people who are entering illegally are endangering their lives. They are coming by boats which are unsafe to the English Channel. Many of these boats actually drown, they are capsized, and a lot of people lose their life. So we should not really encourage these people, and that is why, as per the UK government, this kind of a policy will discourage people to enter UK illegally, and that is why we are doing this. However, as per the author, there are multiple issues with this plan. Let's look at these issues one by one. The first issue is that this plan is punishing those people who are seeking asylum in UK, and this goes against Refugee Convention of 1951. The Refugee Convention of 1951 says that any state should not penalize any person who is seeking sanctuary into their country if they present themselves to the authorities on the arrival. Meaning that, let's assume I come to UK without any visa, without any document, through an unauthorized manner. But as soon as I arrive in UK, I go to the police station or to the authorities and tell them, see, I have come here, please give me asylum. That means that now the UK government has a responsibility of not penalizing this person because they presented themselves to the authorities. This is being violated by this plan. In fact, the plan is also against Article 14 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says that everyone has a right to enjoy in their country asylum from persecution. So if a person is being persecuted in their country, they are being killed by the government or by the forces, they have the right to seek asylum in some other country. UK is going against this as well. The second issue is that it is unclear how economic, financial and healthcare rights of the people will be taken care of. As soon as the people from UK board the flight to Rwanda, now the UK's responsibility ends. That is also where the problem lies. Who will take care of these people, of their healthcare, etc. Once they go to Rwanda, there is no clarity on that. And third, there is no clarity how will it stop the smuggling operations. Because once these people go to Rwanda, what if they again try to enter UK second time or third time? What will happen then? Because the same thing happened with Israel. As I said earlier, Israel had a deal with Rwanda in a similar manner that people coming to our country illegally will send to you. But that deal was cancelled in 2019. Why? Because the people that Israel used to send to Rwanda, many of them used to sneak out and again they used to enter Israel or other European nations. So that is why that deal had to be cancelled. As I said earlier, Australia also had a similar deal with a small country called Papua New Guinea, in which they used to send the illegal immigrants to the island nation. But the Supreme Court of Papua New Guinea said that this is illegal and this should not be allowed, and that deal also got cancelled. So this is not the first time that the developed nations are doing something like this. In fact, this has increasingly become more and more common amongst these nations. Now, if you look at the official numbers in UK, 28,000 people entered UK illegally through boats in 2021. The number of people who are coming to UK illegally, especially from northern France to the English Channel, have increased considerably. This is mainly through the help of these illegal smugglers who try to arrange a boat which is not very safe, and then they make sure that the boat crosses the English Channel, which in most cases does not happen. In fact, last November itself, 27 people lost their life when inflatable boat carrying these migrants was capsized in the English Channel itself. And that is why the UK government has made a plan to discourage these people and the smugglers from entering into UK. Now let me give a very interesting reminder which you might be able to connect with. If you look at UK and if you have read world history, you would see that this is not the first time something like this has happened. If you have read world history and you have read about the American Revolution, you'd read about how America was actually established. America was established because UK and other European countries sent their prisoners and the people who they did not want in the society to a very far away continent called America. That is how America actually was established. The first generation of Americans were not local people. They were people who were actually sent from UK and from other European countries to actually go as a punishment to a faraway continent. They were the ones who set up their own country. So it's actually something that you see in history being repeated. Similarly, Australia was found. If you look at the history of Australia, Australia was found in the same manner. UK said that we do not want to keep prisoners and criminals, etc., in our country. We will send them far away so that our country doesn't get populated. So they sent these people to a far away island which came to be known as Australia. So Australia also was founded because of this decision of UK not to keep these people in their country itself. So it's kind of a history repeating itself if you say this. The next article that we have is about the NITI Aayog targeting a push to the electric vehicle in the country by introducing a new draft policy called the battery swapping policy. Now, let me tell you in very simple terms what this is. Let's say you buy an electric car right now. Let's say Tata Nexon or any electric car of Hyundai or any other company. Now, what happens is when you have to drive the car, you have to charge the battery. Now, you can't take out the battery from the car and bring it to your house and charge, right? You have to attach the charger to the car wherever the car is parked. This is what happens right now. NITI Aayog is saying that this is a major problem. What the car manufacturers and the two-wheeler manufacturers have to do is they have to make swappable batteries. Means, let's assume I have a car, my battery is over. It should be possible for me to just take out the battery, send it to a shop where they will charge it, and till then take a charged battery from that shop and put it in my car. Just like a gas cylinder that you have at your house. When you have a gas cylinder at your house, the LPG, the cylinder is over, what do? You don't just take the same cylinder and then get it filled. You actually go give the empty cylinder to the gas agency, they give you a filled cylinder and then you put it in the gas. Simple. As per NITI Aayog, this is what should happen with the electric vehicle batteries also. Because number one, not everyone has a parking space where they can park the electric car and they can put the electric charger also. Secondly, once your battery charge is over, it will be very difficult for you to find the charger and the charging place. They are not as frequent as the petrol pumps. That is why people are not buying electric cars. So batteries should be swappable. You should be able to take it out and you should be able to give to a lot of shops where they can charge, and the batteries can be used in different types of cars. This is the draft policy in very, very simple terms. The policy also says that there should be incentives given for electric vehicles that come with these swappable batteries. For example, their GST should also reduce, because right now the swappable batteries that we have in some of the two-wheelers, they have a GST of 18%. So as per NITI Aayog, that should also be reduced. The policy recommends that we should first start with all the metropolitan cities having a population greater than 4 million, that is 40 lakh, for development of battery swapping network. Means setting up those places, shops or centers where you can give your empty battery and you can take the filled battery till the time that the empty battery is getting charged. So this should be done first in the tier 1 cities, and then after 2-3 years we should now go to population of greater than 5 lakh and target those towns as well, so that the number of people who are opting for electric vehicles is increased in the country. Now, this concept of battery swapping is actually known as battery as a service. This phrase has been used in the news very frequently these days. BAAS, that is battery as a service. As I said, this is a system in which the batteries can be removed and they can be charged at a different place. This is seen as a solution towards the charging problem that we have. So it means that the electric vehicle companies can sell vehicles in two forms. Number one, the vehicles which are fixed with removable batteries, or secondly, vehicles which have batteries on lease. That means that you just take the vehicle, you don't take the battery along with it, you can just lease it from a shop that has the charging stations. That means that your cost of buying the electric vehicle will reduce drastically. Because when you go and buy an electric car, about 40% cost of that car is just the battery. So you go to the car owner, you say that I just want the electric car, I don't want to purchase the battery. About the battery, I will keep on taking it from the shop whenever I have to use the car. I will take it for 1 day or 2 days, I will pay 500 or 1000 rupees for the battery charging, and then I'll return the battery. That can decrease the cost of the vehicle considerably. But that would require interoperability. Means That would require that the batteries can be used in different types of cars. It cannot be like there's a different battery for Tata Nexon, different battery for different kinds of electric cars, etc. It has to be the same, only then this would function. Just like a gas cylinder, the example that I gave you earlier. When you actually take a gas cylinder from a gas agency, these are interoperable. You don't say that I want a cylinder only of my size, because all the cylinder sizes and their composition that are used in residential complexes are the same. So there is no problem of differentiating between these, and that is how the car battery should also be as per the NITI Aayog and their policy. Only that will ensure that we have much more acceptance of electric vehicles. Battery swapping is needed. Why? Because as I said, high cost of electric vehicle that will come down if you don't have to purchase the battery along with it. Secondly, the range anxiety. Why many people still don't buy electric cars is because they are afraid what will happen if the battery runs out and I don't find a battery station. So that will reduce their anxiety because they can keep more than one battery on the go when they are going for a long drive. Third, there is lack of charging infrastructure still, and this battery as a service can also be a solution. Also, when you have specialized places where batteries are being charged, the number of incidents of hazards will also reduce considerably. So this is the draft policy to give a push to electric vehicles in India. These are the articles we wanted to discuss in the Hindu newspaper today. Now a couple of practice questions. Number one, giving push to the idea of battery as a service can significantly increase the adoption rate of electric vehicles in India. Do you agree? Discuss. Second, increase urgency to sign the free trade agreements signal towards government's acceptance of global trade as the driver of India's growth. Elaborate. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video.